Thank you very much, Lasky Hirlach, and thank you very much, Minister, for joining us today. I think the extension of the investigation is something which, while in some senses there's much that can be understood, there's much that expands, I think even you, Minister, will also understand there is also a deep, deep disappointment and upset for many. I think that we heard survivors who have been waiting and planning and living their lives with the expectation that a resolution will be arrived at this spring, who were very shocked and disappointed going into the Christmas period to be told that yet again there would be a further postponement of any form of resolution for them. Minister, I understand that there are two components here. There is the task of unravelling the great architecture of containment, of abuse, of exploitation that we had within our state. And then there is the imperative in terms of those who endured and survived those systems to ensure that they are given resolution and satisfaction. What I feel, unfortunately, is that both of those goals are not being satisfied currently. I would have preferred if, at the point when we realised that yet another interim report would be coming rather than a final report, that we would have had, alongside that interim report, interim recommendations, interim findings, interim actions that would be taken by the state. If we look back to previous reports from the Commission of Investigation, previous reports called for the reopening of the redress scheme or the introduction of similar schemes. That was back in 2017. And in fact, in May 2017, so almost a very substantial period of time ago, at that time, there was a call and a recognition, for example, in respect of the Bethany homes, in respect of those who had not been given satisfaction and redress. And Minister, I really would ask, is there any reason, given that that was an interim recommendation back when that we would not have the reopening of those schemes or the introduction of similar alternative schemes to be happening in parallel with the further untangling of this very complex architecture of abuse? Because I think what we must acknowledge, and I would ask you, Minister, just to confirm, I don't believe that the government or anybody would now, I hope not, but maybe you might confirm this for us, we must surely all now accept the fact of abuse and neglect. What remains to be discovered, to be investigated, is the scale and the many, many strands of that abuse and neglect. Given that there is that principled recognition that there have been public apologies, surely we need to move in parallel to opening redress schemes. And I know it has been talked about possibly bringing in new redress schemes, and I think that's something that maybe should be examined, because I do think something that is long overdue examination is the indemnity scheme that was originally signed, because I think we need to look to deepening responsibilities. I don't believe that that scheme can be stand under its current thing, and I think we need to look to expand on that. The Bethany home survivors have been mentioned. When we come to the multiple strands, this is my concern, Minister. It's going to continue. I've spoken to you previously about those in psychiatric institutions, those who, for example, spent their lives there because of postnatal depression. Those, for example, in relation to the day schools, those children from the mother and baby schemes who suffered abuse in those contexts. These are all the strands that need untangling, Minister, and they will continue. So we will have to, at a certain point, say we begin our next inquiry, and that's going to have to happen. Minister, in respect of the specific aspects, I have concerns around the confidential committee and the intersection between that and the investigation. I've raised those previously. My concern is that many of those who took that brave step of testifying, of giving their story to the confidential committee, have not been supported with counselling and other supports. This is something that's come up again and again. I would be happy to see the budget expanded if the supports given to those engaging were expanded. But crucially, many of those who gave testimony to the confidential committee believed that they were giving testimony and evidence, and yet the investigation is happening in a separate space. So we have those who want their stories, not everybody, but those who want their stories on the record. They want clarity. They believe that they want sworn evidence of what has happened to them to be on the record. The essence of the confidential committee is that much of that personal testimony and experience is not necessarily coming through the evidentiary strand as well as through the committee. And I think that's very, very important, Minister, that would be addressed and that would be done. I think those of the 519 who have engaged with the confidential committee should be given the option of having their experiences reflected in testimony and on the record, because it is a thing to speak up, and many people should not have their story disappear, something that was often very hard to tell. And I believe I would like you, Minister, to address what supports may be given to those going through the process, because we have the need for supports for those who've been, many with reduced life expectancy because of their experiences, who've gone through the system, and the need for on-the-ground supports for those engaging with the system now. Minister, I want to welcome your decision in respect of Tuam. I think it was the right decision. I think that forensic investigation will be important. I'm glad that you clarified that that is not going to delay this report further, the final report, but it is important. And I would say that we are going to have to look to Bessborough again. 472 deaths of infants in 19 years in Bessborough, many of them from malnutrition. Miasmas. We need to look, and with that forensics of the real forensics of these investigations into burials, we need to look at forensic accounting. My final question to you, Minister, will be: what will be done in terms of the forensic accounting? Because very clever company structures are being brought in now to ensure that monies are moved and that resources are not being cleared, and that we don't have the clarity around, for example, the exploitation of people's work and their labour. Because there is a forensic to the accounting too, and it is a double abuse to have abused somebody and then to use very modern methods to ensure that their records are not necessarily accessible or that they do not get financial redress. And that is true for individuals who may take cases, as well as for the concerns of the wider state. Minister, perhaps you might just address these concerns, and as I would say, using the quote of last, do something. Let us do something in 2019 for these survivors. And Minister, I would like you to be the one who has the opportunity to do something, and I am concerned that the delay may limit our opportunities for that. Thank you.